Welcome to Mojo Talks. I'm Eric, and today on Context is King, as always, I'm joined by Ash. How you doing, Ash?
Very good.
And so we're talking pretty huge verses right here. Facebook versus Google. Last week, there was an article in Wired that basically chronicled the last 2 years of Facebook's history and basically referred to it as some kind of hell. Is that a fair assessment?
It also takes 2 years to read that article. Yeah, very long article. Is it hell? Yes and no, right? I mean, look, the change, okay, operationally, the changes to the feed reduced time spent on the site. User growth has slowed down. So on those metrics, sure, you could say it's been a tough few years. But really, it's not about that, right? It's about Russia. And right now, it's always about Russia these days. And right now, half of Americans want blood. They want an explanation. You know, there's half of the electorate that loves Trump still being there, despite what the polls say. And there's half that are kind of saying, how the hell did this happen? How did someone that half of America thinks is so ill-equipped to be president, how did he land in office? And as much as, you know, you could say the Democrats are looking for an excuse, it's not just the Democrats, there's other...
Who is it? Who's got this bloodlust?
Honestly, I think a lot of like the technologists who early on, you know, at the advent of like the technical revolution, the internet wanted to change the world and make it a better place, them seeing that their creations like Facebook and Twitter have been weaponized and used against them and outsmarted by the big bad Russians across the world, I think that upsets them quite a bit, right? So yeah, I do think that, you know, a lot of this is coming from the tech community and obviously, you know, left-leaning voters. But look, it doesn't help that Mark Zuckerberg himself, right after the election, said that it's a pretty crazy idea that Facebook was used to affect the election. And now pretty much everybody, apart from Donald Trump, concedes that yes, the Russians did use these technology platforms to turn people against one another, so to speak. But at the same time, it doesn't help that like this past weekend, their vice president of advertising, Rob Goldman, said most of the coverage of Russian meddling involves their attempt to affect the outcome of the US election. I have seen all of the Russian ads, and I can say very definitely that swaying the election was not the main goal, end quote. That almost sounds like Trump. I mean, look, exactly. I'll tell you one thing. Rob Goldman got a couple of texts through Messenger this weekend, and he was probably, if his badge was still operational Monday morning, he was probably summoned into their communications office, and they probably told him to shut his mouth, right? Because the last thing Facebook wants to do now, after being blamed for Donald Trump, is to say, no, you know, Donald Trump legitimately was elected without us meddling. So it's just, it looks pretty messy, but you know, the irony and the paradox is that business is booming and Facebook is doing better than ever, and that's the nature of the beast.
But the crazy thing is that when they filed for an IPO, there was some talk of, you know, is social or Facebook going to kill search, Google? Is that, you know, is that something that, is that a fair thing to wonder?
Yet. No, I don't think so. Look, for one is a need and one is a nice to have, right? I mean, sure, one is more addictive than the other. Nobody wakes up in the middle of the night and like, let me check my Google search.
What about, so what is the first thing you do when you wake up?
No, I actually try not to. I'll be honest, the first thing I look at when I turn on my phone is check email on Gmail. But for a lot of people, it's check Twitter, it's check Facebook, because it's very addictive. And we all get that. And again, the irony, talking about the tech crowd, the tech community, there was an article which I didn't read, I just saw the headline. It wasn't clickbaity enough. It said that basically the tech community is raising their kids without tech in their lives.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of articles.
What does that tell you, right? But yeah, I don't think that one is necessarily going to kill the other, frankly. But I don't think anything will really kill Google, because at the end of the day, Google is a real utility, the search, right? Like you can't go a day without searching, but you could basically say, enough's enough, I'm not going to be on Facebook, and your life fundamentally is the same. But if you didn't use Google, well then I don't think that your day would be, yeah, you wouldn't have a job, you couldn't do anything. So the same way that Facebook Watch isn't going to kill YouTube, no, Facebook is not going to kill Google.
But speaking of Watch, so recently when asked about Facebook's video ambitions, the YouTube CEO, Susan Wojcicki, she said, what was it? Something to the effect of they should stick to baby pictures.
Yeah, so I love Susan, not just because we're biased as a YouTube partner. She does go out there quite a bit and engage with the community. And I like her because her last name, less letters than my last name, but more difficult to pronounce. But look, I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't love her saying that, just because It's cool if you're like on a basketball court to talk smack, but it does remind me, look, I don't think Facebook Watch poses an existential threat to YouTube. I think YouTube is the most dominant platform in its field. I think YouTube is more dominant in search, in video, than Google is in search, and that tells you everything you need to know. That said, it reminded me a little bit in 1997 when Steve Jobs returned to Apple. They asked at the time Michael Dell, who was on top running Dell, which was the most successful company in that space, what do you think of the return? And he said, quote, what would I do if I was running Apple? I would shut it down and give the money back to the shareholders. Now, Steve Jobs heard this and he told us, can we swear on this show?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, we could. Fuck yeah. No, he goes, so Steve Jobs told Apple employees, fuck Michael Dell, right? So I'm not saying Zuckerberg walked around Facebook telling his team, F Susan, but I don't think you need to say that. I mean, look, I really don't, I'm afraid Susan's going to shut down our channel, but I don't think Susan needed to go there and say that. I think there's no need for that because YouTube is so dominating in video. But that's just me.
But in fairness, also, you know, I read the exchange, and she didn't want to go there. Like, it literally was drawn out of her. So, you know, at some point.
Fair enough. But I mean, that's the thing is she is a human being. She's
Right.
not like a robotic, you know, leader that stands there and just regurgitates. Like I've seen her talk. She's a human being. You see the emotion. She's very authentic.
And she was diplomatic at first.
Yeah, and the reality is she is in a tough spot because YouTube also has come under fire by the creator community, but nothing like Facebook has gone through because people are looking to blame somebody for Trump.
And so also Jonah Peretti, CEO of BuzzFeed, said that maybe Facebook should share revenue. What do you think about that?
Again, I don't want to repeat this once a week. More likely, I grow hair like Fabio. Okay, look, here's the bottom line. I'm saying this as like an entrepreneur giving props to Mark Zuckerberg, but some people will read it as a knock, and it's not meant as a knock. So that will not likely happen because Mark Zuckerberg, to his genius in Facebook, built a system where brands and publishers pay Facebook to be promoted, to boost their posts, to be seen. So if all of a sudden you expect Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook to do a 180 and say, we're going to give you money back, that's when all of a sudden it might be rainy and hell on Wall Street. So there's no reason to do that. Jonah's comment, to put it into context, was, hey, instead of launching Watch and saying we're going to share revenue here where there's nobody, or Instant Articles, this new thing that will probably not even last more than a year, and we're going to share revenue there. Jonah's comment, valid, was you got all this money coming in through the news feed, why don't you share money there? But Facebook has already conditioned the world the other way to get paid. So with 2 billion users, you know, the bottom line is Facebook is very addictive. It's installed across many, many people's phones and computers. And so, no, I don't see that happening. But I totally, hey, more props to Jonah for bringing it up.
But here's the big question. I mean, Facebook, 10 years from now, is it just going to be a footnote in digital history? Is it going to be, MySpace or Friendster, or will it have a larger place in the future?
So look, the difference between MySpace and Friendster fundamentally was Friendster was very early stage, both in terms of where the market for social networking was, but also just as a company. And then it got usurped its leadership position by Friendster. Friendster got acquired by News Corp that ultimately wanted to take it very much Hollywood and media. So that was more of an execution issue. Facebook, to their credit, having already IPO'd, they have a big moat. They have a big hedge that they got this war chest. So they'll be fine. But really, the main reason why Facebook is never going to disappear is because Mark Zuckerberg, you could criticize him for a lot of things, but he was very smart to realize, like, hey, I got to go out and buy Instagram. I got to go out and buy WhatsApp. So if your question is Facebook.com, that product that is Facebook, the social networking site, yeah, I think you might see less teenagers use it and maybe more fragmentation because there's fragmentation. But Facebook as a company will be around, and it will be one of those iconic companies because it's diversified quite a bit.
So it's all about evolution. And context is king. Thank you, Ash.
And adapting to change.
That's right. So we're going to adapt to change. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Ash.